So I don't know if you're getting tired of us talking about manners, but we're not tired of it. That's right. This is episode 5632 of Manners You Ought to Teach Your Kids and Be Modeling from Them. But anyway, my name is Dan. I'm one of the teaching pastors at Life Fellowship in suburban Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm joined today with our executive producer, Josh Brahm, who is the president and founder of the Equal Rights Institute. And we're talking once again about manners, things you ought to be talking to your kids about. I've had as a guest on here several times, Jason Lanier, who is our worship pastor. He overthinks everything, and that's why I love him so much. He thinks about whys behind it. And one of the things he did for years, and I think he still does, he would always take his kids to school, and it was quite a drive. Sometimes it was a 40-minute drive for him to drop them off at the private school they were attending. Wow. And rather than just have that be downtime or music time, he intentionally would, sometimes he listened to Life Talks, and he called this helping my boys become less stupid time. And you have to know Jason. Yeah, you have to know Jason to know he's from Brunswick County, North Carolina, so he's a plain talker. But they would take different things like this, and Jason.
Well, they're going to love this story when they hear it.
They're used to it. There's nothing that's sacred in the Lanier home when it comes to how they engage with these. It's just wonderful to watch. But he intentionally would use drive time to teach things like manners, to ask apologetic questions, to how do you treat a young lady when you're ready to date, because he had 3 boys. And so I'm hoping that maybe some of you are kind of making these topics that you'll talk to your kids about as well when you're out and about town with them. But here's one that it's funny because I was just talking to somebody over lunch with it. Good manners to me is being mindful of other people's time by being punctual.
Yes.
And respecting other people's time.
I completely agree with this.
Yeah, and somebody's going to probably say, I waited on you on time 10 minutes or 15 minutes, and that happens. I realize that. Sure. But I think we ought to be mindful of it.
Yeah. You're never happy about it if you're late. Neither of us, like for both of us, I think we are really, really kind of upset if we are accidentally late. And sometimes it's just traffic. The 77 traffic over here.
If you live in an urban area, suburban area, it's gonna
we try so hard to be early, if not on time.
Yeah, and I probably take it to an obsessive level at times where, there was one time I was leaving with my wife. My wife has not a problem with
being late?
Yes. Okay, if I'm just going to be honest, really not a problem.
Yeah.
All right. Me, on the other hand, there are mixed marriages,
a common
right?
dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and she was late and made me late, and I knew there was going to be traffic, and I'm going to tell you that I did not handle it like a good pastor should. I was being rather cruelly vocal about this and passive aggressive and several other things, and
snorting, sniffing.
Yes, and I'm also driving unsafely, trying to make up for lost time. And we pull into the event that we were supposed to be at, and we were the first people there.
Oh no!
So
that must have felt so terrible when you got horrible. There.
And my wife, being the gracious person she is, she did not rub my nose in it, which she would have had every right to do. But
although she had, you might not have grown and to the point where you'd be telling the story now on the podcast.
Probably not. Probably
you might have known the
round
response.
2 of that episode, perhaps. But
you might have needed some time to process.
The friend I was talking to mentioned that this is kind of an obsession with him as well. And I don't, being punctual and mindful and respectful of other people's schedule, I think sends a good message.
Yes.
And if you are tardy, if you are late for some reason, offering at least acknowledgement that unintentionally you were late.
And let them know ahead of time, like a text, like, hey, I'm running late, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to watch different presidential administrations go through.
Yes, but what do you have in mind?
well, Biden was chronically late, and so was Obama. Obama was late because he was such an extrovert.
To events?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yeah,
I've never gone to an event where a president, besides like the March for Life, like technically, occasionally. But besides that,
Obama, it was well known because he would stop and talk to people, which would make him late and make his handlers crazy. Because he's an extrovert.
Right.
And sometimes
there's an amazing Key and Peele sketch about this, about how long he would spend with people sometimes.
Yeah. And that in and of itself is not a bad attribute to make people feel seen and important.
Yes.
At the same time, being mindful of others. But I
Sure.
think we Americans also do take it to a little bit of an obsession. And the reality is part of it is because we actually wear a watch on our wrist or in our hand with our phone.
I was wondering about that.
200 or 300 years ago, nobody had a watch. It was like, hey, we're going to meet you when the sun goes down, or at the changing of or whatever. So, but I do think showing respect for other people is just always a good idea.
Yes.
In how we engage with each other. The next one is similar to it, and that's being able to listen without interrupting.
Oh man. I've got so much to say about this. This is a hard one for my family. My family is working really hard at this internally, but
this is
boy,
what
they
I
struggle.
Often have to do when I'm doing any kind of marriage coaching or counseling, because when we're working through things, often what happens is we'll listen just long enough till we hear something we disagree with.
Yes.
And then we want to stop then and get and I'll say, no. They got to wait until they finished.
Or at best,
talking.
you are at least not listening anymore. You are in your head planning out how you are going to say.
So here's what I do with that. Before they're allowed to respond to what they disagreed with, they must say back to the person exactly what they said. They never get past that first one.
Yeah.
So I make them do it a second time. I said, now this time I want you to listen all the way through to what they said.
Nice.
So because you're going to need to repeat it back to them.
Right.
Then we'll talk. Then you get your turn.
Yeah.
Now it's very laborious and frustrating for people who are not willing to play by the rules. But
it's good practice for them.
Being
they
a
might
good
be
listener
listening for the first time.
Being a good listener, though, is a good skill.
It is.
It's a respectful.
It's hard. Like so, I go around. Like one of my favorite talks I give is on just practical dialogue tips. It's like it's not really just focused on the subject of abortion. It's just like, look, we've gone through the fire of like 5,000 conversations with people who disagreed, and we've learned a lot from that. We've learned a lot of things that don't work and a lot of things that work really well. And there's some things where there's a lot of overlap with our colleagues in apologetics. There's some kind of obvious things, finding common ground, everyone agrees. We've got some things that are kind of like unique to our style. We've got a very kind of transparent, authentic style or whatever. But listening to understand people, not just waiting to talk, is one of the hardest for even me to be really good at, like at a consistent level. I'm really good at asking questions. I'm really good at finding common ground all the time. Even I sometimes I want to jump in. I've probably interrupted you on this pod. We could like do a super cut of all the different times we've interrupted. It would take too long. Like that just happens. But like it's like I learned several years ago how important it is to not be like multitasking while someone's talking to you. Because I built up this dumb husband habit. So guys, listen up. This one's for free. Like I would get home from work. The kids would all want to play. They'd want to do like a lightsaber battle or whatever is the thing right now. And kind of the rule was I'm going to go and be with mom first and see how she's doing and then play with you later. So I'd be hanging out. Maybe Hannah is in the kitchen working on dinner. And we'd be talking about our day, and I built up this dumb husband habit where we'd be talking about our day, and she'd be telling me, and I would be browsing Facebook on my phone.
Oh,
boy, do you hear the judgment over here? From like, and here's the thing,
my judgment is conviction.
Exactly. I know, right? I'm like,
that's like, I do that too.
Know. This happens every time I tell the story. It's like it's what you should do. You should be feeling that inside, like of course. And everyone's like, and it's like, look, it was. I meant so well. I thought I was listening because I could tell that she was, talking, right? And I thought I could kind of follow the themes, but at some point she would ask me like a comprehension question.
Yeah.
And then I would fail miserably. And she would be frustrated as she had the right to be. That wasn't me doing a good job of loving my wife. And so what I've had to do and try to teach people is when you're in a conversation with someone, you have to try to turn that inner monologue on mute. That little voice that's like, that's interesting what they said. I'll respond to that next. Let me think about how I might word that, what argument I might use, blah, blah, blah. Like, they're still talking. You're not engaging with what they're saying right now, especially if it's like emotionally important. If they just said something like important about their background, their childhood history or something like that, like you're not going to be engaged with them because you're planning your next chess move. And I'm like, no, you've got to put that voice on mute. And so I'm just trying to be present in the moment with this person. And I'm just listening to everything she's got to say. And that might be hard because it might take a long time and she might use a whole bunch of different arguments like in a row. And at the end of it, I might have to take a beat and process. And pro-lifers watching, like if we're on campus, would be like, oh, that's an awkward pause. I'm like, no, it's an awesome pause. Because it's showing her what? It's showing her that I'm taking her seriously, that I'm taking her ideas seriously, which no one does anymore. That is not what people are used to. That is not what Christians are known for, is taking people's ideas seriously. So we can just put that voice on mute. And if that means that they talk and then you need to spend some time kind of thinking about that and then responding, that's okay.
Yeah. People often appreciate the opportunity to respond to a clarifying question.
Yes. Yes.
So before you jump into your rebuttal to say, did I understand you correctly when you said or something along that line?
Yes. Rephrasing what they say is a great thing to do.
And
like I hear you saying this, I'm going to put it in my own words and then give them a chance to like correct it and do like the editing pass on it and cross stuff out. And then you fix it. And then anything that you have to say will be so much more persuasive because now they know you do get their argument. You do understand it.
You've earned their respect at that moment.
Yes.
I've often said that, one of the side effects of testosterone is that men have the innate ability to repeat verbatim the last 6 words they heard from somebody else's conversation. Because if you've ever had your wife say, you're not listening to me, and you say, oh, yes, I am. You just said, and we give them the last 6 words they said.
You're not listening to me.
And we think we've won.
Right.
But actually, if you had to go more than 6 words deep, you weren't listening.
Which we know when our kids do this.
And I'm a major rationalizer because I do multitask. I mean, I love multitasking. There's something about my brain. And so I like to say, I'm listening. I'm listening. But it isn't a matter of whether or not you're listening. It's a matter of whether or not you're respecting.
So yes, but like there's a lot of psychological data that suggests that multitasking is a myth. That you're like your brain actually doesn't multitask.
I've read some of those studies, and it's like there's a diminishing law of returns on that. But that's the same. That's true of speed reading
if
too.
Nothing else, you're going back and forth really fast, which you don't want to be doing if you're like reading and then someone's saying something really important to you.
Yeah,
at the time.
The gain is offset by a give. I mean, you have to give away some stuff to gain. But the ability to multitask means you're giving away something.
Sure.
Yeah, just like speed reading, you give away a little bit of comprehension as opposed to...
Maybe the question should be like, what are the kinds of things that are good to kind of multitask with, and what are the things that we should never multitask
Dude, if
during?
I told you the things I multitask during...
I don't know if I want you to say on the air.
No, absolutely
I'm just saying there's at least some things where we should be like, here are times when I should just be focused and not on my phone. And while my wife is talking to me, at me, with me, is maybe like one of like the most obvious top 3.
Yeah, and we all use rationalization. We probably ought to make an episode on that sometime because I'll rationalize while I'm busy.
Yes.
I've got a lot of things I'm juggling. I mean, there's all these little cliches that I give.
Yes.
But the bottom line is sometimes it's ego.
Yes.
And it really is.
Yes.
Look at how busy I am. I don't have time to even give you the personal attention you deserve. Yes. Yeah, that stinks. Yes. Yeah, that's a really bad message.
Or I'm so important, I need to be paying so much attention to my work emails because I'm so important. I might get an interview request or a whatever.
Yeah.
So like I've got to do this. Like, no. Put your phone down. Engage with this person in front of you. It's hard. I know this like less common now. We just need to make it more common. We need to have like the phone baskets on the table as a more common thing.
Interestingly, that was the very next one I had on our list was not using your phone while someone is speaking to you.
I agree. Like you shouldn't do that.
Can I give another one?
Sure.
And Phil, who's working with us, Phil Hall, our a director of what is your title again? Production manager. Yeah. I don't know why I wanted to.
He's the awesome new production manager,
and he is
filling in.
Incredible.
Not filling in,
but
stepping into Brit shoulder.
Before we start, he always says, "Has everybody put their phones on silence?"
Yes,
silent, and that's really a good reminder.
Yes,
that I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to people, and I need to take this call,
right?
And you're listening to the call, and no, you didn't. I know who you're talking to, or they've got that chirp that comes on every time they get a text or every time they get a message.
Yeah.
And their phone's just sitting there chirping like crazy.
Ding, ding, ding,
Yeah, it drives me nuts.
I can do it.
That's one of them.
They're doing that.
Yeah.
They're doing.
Yeah, there's
It's
another
like
one.
their phone just constantly, just like.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, I hear that. Can you not hear that? So,
It's
do you
like,
want to
why
get that?
don't you turn your phone on silent by this point?
Exactly. Yeah. So, okay, here's one that one of our pastors talked about Sunday. That was quite interesting.
Interesting.
This was very commonly a subject that was talked about in my fundamentalist church growing up. And we probably not going to get all the way done with this one.
Okay, yeah.
All right. But it is dressing modestly and appropriately.
Oh man. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we probably have so much common ground here. We have a lot of common ground.
Yeah, we
here.
remember a few years ago when
that
some
liberal.
sports team of ladies was invited to the White House and they showed up wearing flip-flops.
No,
You don't remember that? Yeah,
No.
you can probably find it if you
Is
Google
this
it.
recent?
It probably was either Bush or Obama.
Which administration?
Either Bush or Obama.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't Trump.
It wasn't like a kind of a
Trump
flipping
probably
off to
would have
Trump.
said something. Yeah. And but the president didn't say anything, but a lot of people noticed. And we have very truly become a more casually dressed society. And I don't, I'm convinced whoever invented the necktie was a sadist at some level. For years I wore neckties every day to church.
Hate neckties.
Yeah, here I said, as a pastor, I came to church this morning with shorts on. Or came to my office with shorts on. And I didn't have any meetings that it would have been
right. It's context specific.
Yeah. But I would never preach on a Sunday morning in shorts.
Right.
Though I know people who do. But the thing about it is that I, particularly when it comes to modesty, I really feel like this is an area that there are biblical principles that we're choosing not to consider because we don't want somebody to call us a legalist. So I grew up in a culture where women had to dress very, very modestly, down to sleeves and, nothing even close to cleavage appearing, and dresses and skirts had been below the knee and so forth. Yeah. And there was a patriarchal control factor that I think was very clearly a part of their fixation on that.
Yep.
At the same time, I regularly unfriend people on Instagram because their profile picture as a young person, and that is the domain of young people, is of them in a bikini. I don't need that on my phone.
Yeah.
I don't want to think of you in those terms. I don't want to know that was you.
Right.
And it's kind of interesting, even with and my daughter and I had a big war whenever she was 15 or 16, wanted to wear a bikini to the beach. We lived in, South Florida. But the bottom line is, if you walked in on somebody and they were only in their underwear, there would be a strong reaction. Sure. It would be at the same time, they can wear less than what most underwear covers. And as long as you throw some sand around and some water, somehow it becomes more acceptable. And while people would say, well, now you're sounding like an old man, or you're sounding like a legalist, or you sound like a pastor or whatever, I think the argument is still worthy of engagement. Yeah. Maybe people have a stronger nature than I am, but most men I know are very visually attracted, and you are basically advertising what is not theirs to observe. You're putting on display what is not yours to observe. And I think that dads are derelict in their duties if they don't help their daughters understand the importance of modesty and the power of immodesty, that it not only attracts things that they shouldn't attract, but it also is a stumbling stone to others. Now, there is a clear biblical principle about being a stumbling stone to others.
Sure. So let me see if we have a comment, because I agree with that. But I also think that we ought to be teaching our daughters that it is also like men have a moral responsibility not to just stare at them.
Right. Absolutely.
And
I think that was the missing element of that was the missing element of the legalism. Right. And
so as long as we're saying both of those things in tandem, I think I'm a lot more comfortable than when we're only saying one of the two.
Well, and I will tell you, culture has shifted to a great extent. Also, I think men have a responsibility to this, particularly young men and men who are very much into bodybuilding and so forth, because the culture has shifted. so that there are more young women looking at pornography than at any time in research has ever shown. That 35% of young women are regularly looking at pornography.
It is possible for women to also be physically attracted to and visually attracted to men.
Yeah.
And so
in an inappropriate way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, first of all, I would just challenge the fathers not to be afraid of having uncomfortable conversations as part of your protective calling that you should be having in the life of your family.
With all of your children.
With all of your children.
Yep.
And to have a conversation also with your boys saying, it's inappropriate to respond to immodesty in a variety of ways, everything from catcalling and whistling, or to just simply, there's a principle of the second look. That Martin Luther, I believe, was the one that said, "I cannot prevent a bird from landing in my beard, but I can prevent him from building a nest there."
Yeah,
and I think that is a principle. I mean, any of us can at any point have a turned head.
Yeah. You can drive by a billboard and it's not your fault, but are you staring at the billboard while in traffic for as long as you can? That's a difference. Yeah.
And I think we all have to be mindful of that because we have a sin nature. We have a fallen nature.
Yes. And we shouldn't objectify women.
We shouldn't objectify.
We should just practice and we should not objectifying people.
And we should not feed lust, which is going to be a problem with anybody who is physically normal. There's going to be points in their life where the sexual appetite, which is as much an appetite that is a gift from God as is the appetite that we have for sleep or for food or for drink.
Right.
And I think Christians have been afraid to address this at many levels because, we all freak out when we start talking about the sexual domain. But Scripture certainly addressed it and showed examples of it being abused and misused and all sorts of things.
The church addresses it all the time. It's just a question of, when has the church done it in a balanced way? When has the church addressed sexuality in a balanced way where it's not all focused on what do gay people do, or what does this group? What is going on with trans people? Are we spending enough time cleaning our own house?
The whole counsel of God.
Yes.
Yeah. So interestingly, in the kind of the fundamentalism that I grew up in. And by the way, I've found this to be true. I've done some research. I've often said if I get another doctorate, my intention would be to write a book on this. The common denominators of fundamentalism across religious faith systems.
Oh, that would be so interesting. You should do this.
One of the common denominators, and I'm talking about fundamentalist Christians, like Amish.
Yeah.
Fundamentalist Mormons, LDS, fundamentalist
Jehovah's
Muslims.
Witnesses?
Not.
They count?
I can't say whether they have or not. I don't consider them to be as fundamentalist as some that are more mainstream.
Yeah.
But even Buddhists, Hindus, Islamics, there's always a Catholics. There's a subset that usually goes to a very conservative position, and there are common denominators among them. One of which is the intentional covering of gross sexual sin. And I lived it. I saw that in the world, the extreme world in which I was reared.
Yeah.
And having done some exploration, like the LDS, the multiple wives, the running out of young men in the polygamous branch of the LDS because they're competition for all these kinds of things. There's a huge problem with incest in the Amish community that's very little known outside of the Amish community. But I grew up near an Amish community, so there are these areas that we have to be very, very careful about and aware of. And silence is not an option.
Yeah.
It ought not be an option any more than gossip and gluttony and a lot of other things that also need to be addressed. Yeah. So anyway, man, we're out of time again.
Here we go. So it happens.
All right. Well, here we continue. I think we're getting close to the end. I can see the end from where we're at. So we'll continue this series for a little while longer. But as always, thanks for listening to us at Life Talks. We hope you'll let other people know about us on your social media feeds. And also, if you have a note that you'd like to drop us, a question, or maybe even a suggestion for another episode, contact us, if you would, at lifetalks@lifecharlotte.com. Until next time, thanks for joining us at Life Talks.